Hi there. Um, let's see if I can just make this video. It's a very hot day here. Um, I wanted to do something on this subject of the shadow again, or of shadow issues, because I know we've had some discussions about it, and whether shadow is a good term or not. You know, I think shadow is okay to use as a term. It's fine actually. The thing is, whatever term you use for this capacity or function, which also seems to have a sort of energy attached to it, whatever you use for it, you have to understand that it's not evil, it's not bad as such, you know. I think that's something that has to be understood. So shadow is okay. The term is always going to have a certain ambivalence to it. You could also call it the power of separation or separativeness. You could call it the principle of limitation in some ways, but it has this effect of seeming to sever or shatter, yeah. But it can also be very freeing, you know. And I think you have to understand that it's part of the natural process of consciousness. Um, it's what allows us to, in a sense, become individuals in the first place. And that's an important thing. It allows us to become individuals in the first place. It allows us to think differently and do differently. Um, in some respects, it has that extraordinary capacity for negation, um, which is inevitably an important part of life. But a very small amount of it goes a very, very long way. Um, I think those are the things. Those are probably the main things I wanted to say about it. Uh, it's very powerful, uh, and it's a very, very double-edged sword in a sense because it leads to so much, and in many senses, it actually leads to wisdom because it's the journey. It's a whole part of the journey, and it's an inevitable part of being here. It's not the road of the mystic, yeah, because the road of the mystic is very much union with the source, union with the whole. This is a beautiful thing, yeah, but it doesn't involve this, and the road of the mystic tends to somehow have to demonize shadow, yeah. But the road of, say, the magician or the road of the artist, it has to incorporate shadow somewhere in it. It has to understand it to be able to do what it does. Yeah. Um, in fact, to be able to do anything in some senses. So, uh, just trying to think a bit more about this. Shadow is a natural part of life, whatever you want to call it. And you can call it a principle of separation, you can call it a principle, also a principle of individualizing in a sense. That's another thing. It's also a negatory power. Yeah. A very small amount goes a very long way. It's inevitable, it's natural, it's necessary. Um, in some ways, it seems linked to Earth because it comes into being through manifestation. In some senses, it seems to be linked to fire because it's that separative, novelty producing capacity. Um, but that may be simply the way I'm looking at it, you know, because obviously all the elements have shadow manifestations. And so it's that understanding of how the things that cause us problems, the things that cause us profound problems, which we actually can't cope with at a certain point and yet have to, and that stretches us beyond wherever we are. Seeing that those things coming to be able to encompass them accept them without being overwhelmed by them, and start to be with them in a mature fashion. I think that's part of dealing with what we're calling shadow processes, and I think it's a very important thing. It's a thing which makes people profoundly uncomfortable because it comes so close to their sense of losing everything, you know. But um, the fact is, it's it's part of the reality of being alive, and it has to be faced, and and turned to the positive. That's the other thing. You have to face it, acknowledge it, and then turn it to the positive with positive intention, in a sense. So this is a big work, but you can do it. Okay. Where is shadow coming from? Shadow in the sense that we've been talking about it in our work. Well, look, shadow comes from the breakdown of the relationship within the cardinal axis. It comes back to the breakdown of the relationship between the magician jester axis and the mother nature enchantress axis. Think what happens when there is shadow manifesting. There is the form and the limitation and the darkness which is inherent in Mother Nature. There's nothing wrong with that. They're all perfectly good qualities, yes? They're perfectly good qualities, yeah? You need limitation, otherwise you have no skeleton, otherwise you have no structure, yeah? You need darkness, otherwise there's no rest, there's no potential, there's no place for potential to come through. You need darkness, yeah? But this is okay, limitation, darkness, and separation, because you're in a body now, yeah? Then we've got over here, now, we've got the enchantress. The enchantress is sensitive, imaginative, yeah? Now, if something has broken down, and we'll go into what's broken down in a few minutes, if something has broken down, what have you got? The imagination and the oversensitivity and the grief of the enchantress with the problems that Mother Nature has. Well, not the problems, the qualities that Mother Nature has. The darkness, the limitation, and you get a creation of monsters, basically, essentially. Unreal things. Yeah, that's what you get. But because the relationship between the axes is broken down, you don't have the qualities of this here. Yeah? And these themselves have their own shadows, in inverted commas, yeah. The magician has his shadow. The jester has his shadow, which comes from their being broken off from this. But I'm starting from the point of view of these here. What have you got here? Well, you haven't got, on this axis you had the imagination and oversensitivity, the limitation and the darkness, yeah. And you haven't got the light of the magician, its inventiveness, its capacity to find new solutions to things. You haven't got that coming in. And you haven't got the jester coming in, which is the capacity to actually dispel despair, absolutely dispel despair, and just blow up all of those phobias, yeah. So that gives you part of the nature of shadow, yeah. But let's start the other way as well, okay? Let's say now we're going to start with this one here, magician. This is now we've got the qualities of the magician, the abstraction, the infinite possibilities, yeah, that just go on and on and on and on, yeah, and that create worlds, create potentially false worlds, yeah. And then we've got the jester down here. What's the jester? The jester has no feeling, yeah. The jester is just a drive to go on and on and on, burn everything down if it needs to, but it just needs to feel that high, basically. And the two together, they give you a different kind of shadow. They give you a shadow which is divorced from reality, yeah, and which is and which has seemingly endless energy to pursue that, yeah. What would the answer have been? Being brought down to reality, yeah? Getting in touch with intuition, Yeah. Becoming more organic again. Bringing the magician down to earth, like, so you can see, oh yeah, those were worlds I invented. Yeah. And then this one, just tempering that fire a bit. Yeah. Saying, oh yeah, I remember what feelings are. Yeah. But you see, that what we call the shadow is actually the breakdown of the cardinal axis, most essentially, I think. And when you get that, when you get the breakdown of the cardinal axis, yeah, then all of these things start to sort of like to withdraw back into themselves somehow, yeah. And even the relationship of earth and water isn't good. Even the relationship of air and fire isn't good. Everything withdraws into itself. Then the energy of the earth starts to contract away from the quadrant archetypes that are dependent upon it. Yeah. So that's a hard one. And the same way with the fire when when that happens. The same way with the fire when that happens. Same way with water when that happens. Same way with air when that happens. And then what happens? Well, these archetypes, these quadrant archetypes, the ones most dependent upon Earth, well, you see, this one is meant to go away from Earth on its outer journey. This one is meant to go away from Earth on its inner journey. Well, what do? Well, they seek out Earth. They seek out the cardinal that's missing. Yeah, they start going in the wrong direction. Yeah, so the open state starts going in a an outer journey direction. Not good for it. The outer journey, the closed archetype, yeah, it starts going in an inner journey direction. Not good for it. So then you get the whole thing, the whole awful picture. The cardinals out of relationship to each other, the quadrants going in the wrong directions, setting up reverse journeys which can't work. The whole thing just getting blocked, dysfunctional, and eventually, in every place that it's experiencing this, it's going to break down eventually, and that's what finally leads you to a crisis of healing, really, in a sense. But that's kind of how I'm seeing shadow and shadow processes at the moment. None of it needs to be that way. All that has to happen is for the archetypes to come into virtue and to start going in the right directions. Really, that's the big thing, because think about it. How, in your situation, what do you do? The cardinals are enormous things to think about. Yeah, they're enormous. So what do you want to do to bring them into relationship with each other? You want their energies to circulate. How do you do that? You go on the inner and outer journeys. How do you do that? You bring the quadrant archetypes into virtue. So as far as I can see, the key to dealing with shadow issues is bringing the quadrant archetypes into virtue and have them go on the correct direction, have them go, the open archetypes going on the inner journey, the closed archetypes going on the outer journey. And then the energy circulates and everything starts to work as it should. And that will bring the cardinals into relationship with each other. You see, this isn't a static system. It's in constant motion, and the the cardinals look static, but they're actually almost like dancers, really. But their dance is the quadrant archetypes. It's like the cardinals are the dancers, and the quadrant archetypes are the dance. That's how I'm seeing it.